Welcome back, everyone, to our Bible discussion here on Bible and Me. This is where we really try to get into the heart of the scriptures.
That's the goal. Glad to be diving in again.
And today we're tackling a huge theme, something absolutely central, the kingdom of God. Now, here's something to think about right off the bat. Before Jesus ever announced the kingdom, the idea itself was already deeply rooted in the Hebrew scriptures.
Oh, absolutely. It's not something that just appears out of nowhere in the New Testament. You really have to understand that Old Testament foundation to grasp what Jesus was talking about.
Right. So, our mission today, if you will, is to trace that thread. We want to uncover how this idea of God's kingship, his kingdom, develops right from Genesis all the way through the prophets.
Exactly. It's less a history lesson and more about seeing this amazing continuity, this single story unfolding about God's reign. And hey, if you find this discussion helpful, do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, maybe even ring the bell so you don't miss future talks.
Yeah, it definitely helps others find us. Okay, so roots. Where better to start than the very beginning, Genesis? How do we see God as king, like right there in creation?
Well, it's fascinating when you look at it that way. Creation isn't just God, making things appear. It's presented as a sovereign act. God is establishing his domain, his
Yeah.
rule. Think about it like building a palace or establishing a territory.
Okay, I get that. It's an act of authority.
Precisely. And then you get to Genesis 1.26, which is just incredibly significant. Let us make mankind in our image and let them rule.
Rule. So that's not just about naming
So I'll
animals.
just say, no, it's about delegated authority. Humanity, made in God's image, was meant to reflect his benevolent rule within his creation, to govern as his representatives in this perfect domain he'd set up, walking in harmony with the king.
A perfect domain. But as we know, that harmony gets broken pretty quickly. The fall. How does that fit into this kingdom picture? Is it just disobedience or something more?
It's definitely more. It's presented as a direct act of rebellion against the king. Taking the forbidden fruit wasn't just breaking a rule, it was challenging God's right to rule, his authority over his own creation.
So it's like treason,
In
almost.
a sense, yeah, it introduced chaos, discord, cracks in that perfect kingdom. It fractured the relationship between the king and his appointed rulers, humanity, and brought sin and separation into the picture. A fundamental disruption.
Wow. Okay, so that's a pretty bleak picture. The king's realm fractured by rebellion.
Yeah.
But God doesn't just scrap the whole project, right? What's the next move in this kingdom story?
He absolutely doesn't scrap it. And that's what's so powerful. Despite the rebellion, God remains committed to his plan. The story immediately shifts to God actively working to restore things, starting with choosing a specific people.
You mean Israel and the Exodus.
Exactly. God intervenes dramatically to rescue Israel from slavery in Egypt. Think about the plagues, the parting of the Red Sea. These are just miracles. They're powerful demonstrations of his sovereign power. It's the king reclaiming his people from another ruler's oppressive kingdom pharaohs.
Okay, so the Exodus is like a kingdom reclaiming its citizens, a liberation into God's kingdom.
Yes, precisely. And then you get to Mount Sinai. That's another crucial moment. God gives them the law, the 10 commandments, and everything else.
The covenant.
The covenant, right. He formalizes his relationship with them. This isn't just a list of do's and don'ts. It's like the constitution for his people, defining their identity in relation to him as king.
And there's that specific phrase in Exodus, chapter 19,
Exodus 19.6, yeah. It's pivotal. God says he intends to make them a kingdom of priests and a holy nation.
a kingdom of priests. What does that actually mean?
It means they were meant to be distinct, set apart. Their role was to represent God, the true king, to the other nations, to mediate his presence and his ways. They were supposed to be a living demonstration of what life under God's good rule looks like.
So Israel's very existence was meant to point back to God's kingship.
That was the ideal, yes. A nation showcasing the king's character and reign to the whole world, a really central part of the kingdom narrative.
Okay, that makes sense. But then things get complicated again, don't they? Israel starts looking around at other nations,
Yes. They settle in the land, and eventually the people start saying, we want a king let the other nations have.
which is kind of ironic given they already have the ultimate king.
Exactly. It highlights this tension, this human desire for a visible, tangible ruler, even when you have a divine and a visible one. So the prophet Samuel, though initially reluctant, anoints Saul as the first human king of Israel.
And this marks a shift.
Mhm.
We now have an earthly king alongside the heavenly king.
Right. And you immediately see the contrast, don't you? God's perfect eternal throne versus these often very flawed temporary human rulers who followed Saul, David, Solomon, and the rest. They made mistakes, big ones sometimes.
But did Israel having a human king mean God stopped being king? How did the people navigate that?
That's a key point. No, it didn't nullify God's ultimate reign, and we see this reflected powerfully in writings from that period, especially the Psalms.
Ah, the Psalms. Right. They talk a lot about God as king.
Constantly. They act almost like a corrective, a constant reminder. Even with a human monarch on the throne in Jerusalem, the Psalms keep affirming God's ultimate sovereignty.
Any specific examples jump out?
Oh, plenty. Think of Psalm 2, where God says, I have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. Even the human king was supposed to be God's appointed representative. Or Psalm 103, verse 19, the Lord has established his throne in heaven and his kingdom rules over all.
Rules overall. That's pretty unambiguous.
It really is. It anchors everything. No matter what happens on earth, no matter how flawed the human leaders are, God's throne is secure, his kingdom is supreme, his sovereignty endures.
Okay, so even with human kings, the focus eventually has to return to God's ultimate rule. And when those human kings really started to falter, failing to live up to that ideal, God sent prophets.
Yes. Exactly. As the earthly monarchy often struggled, even becoming corrupt, God raised up prophets. Their job wasn't just to call out sin, but also to point people back to God's unchanging reign and, crucially, to point forward to a future hope.
A future hope for the kingdom.
A much bigger vision of the kingdom, actually. The prophets started speaking about a coming king, an ideal king from David's line, yes, but one whose rule wouldn't just be over Israel, it would be universal.
Universal, like over the whole world.
Precisely. Isaiah is maybe the clearest example. He paints these incredible pictures of peace and justice under this future king. You know, the famous image of the wolf living with the lamb, the leopard lying down with the goat, a child leading them.
That vision of shalom, of complete peace and restoration.
Exactly. It's a vision of creation healed, ruled perfectly. And Isaiah 9 is foundational here, verses 6 and 7.
Right, the passage often read at Christmas. For to us a child is born.
To us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace.
The government will be on his shoulders. That's kingdom language.
Absolutely. And it goes on. Of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. It speaks of an eternal, perfectly just, and peaceful reign that expands beyond just Israel to encompass everything. It broadens the whole concept of the kingdom.
So the prophets are expanding the horizon, looking beyond the present failures to God's ultimate perfect fulfillment of his kingdom.
Yes, they're providing this incredible hope, this vision of what God's rule truly means when fully realized.
Which brings us to another key prophetic voice, especially during a really dark time for Israel. Daniel. He lived during the exile in Babylon, right?
That's right. Israel's kingdom had collapsed. The temple was destroyed. Many were deported. It could have seemed like God's plan had failed. But Daniel receives these, well, extraordinary visions.
Visions about kingdoms.
Yes, sweeping visions of world history. In Daniel chapter 2, King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream about a giant statue made of different metals: gold head, silver chest, bronze belly, iron legs, feet of iron, and clay.
And Daniel interprets this.
He does. He explains that the different parts represent a succession of powerful earthly empires: Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, Rome, kingdoms that rise and fall. They seem powerful, dominant,
But temporary.
but temporary. That's the key. Because then, in the dream, something else happens. A stone appears.
The stone. What's special about it?
It's cut out, but not by human hands. That's crucial phrasing. It signifies divine origin. This isn't just another human empire replacing the last one.
Okay, so it's from God. What does it do?
It strikes the statue on its feet of iron and clay, the final, somewhat fragile stage of human kingdoms, and the whole thing shatters. It turns to dust. And then the stone grows and grows until it becomes a huge mountain that fills the whole earth.
Wow, that's quite an image. So the stone represents
God's kingdom, a kingdom that isn't built by human power or conquest, but established by God himself. It completely replaces and supersedes all human kingdoms, and unlike them, it's eternal and universal.
And Daniel explicitly says this, doesn't he?
He does. Daniel 2.44 is incredibly clear. In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will itself endure forever.
Will never be destroyed, endure forever. That's the ultimate promise.
It is. And you can imagine how powerful this vision was for the exiled Jews. It gave them this rock solid hope that despite appearances, despite the power of Babylon or whoever came next, God's eternal kingdom was coming and would ultimately triumph. It really shaped their anticipation for a future king, this Messiah figure, who would usher in that final indestructible kingdom.
It really is amazing when you trace it like this. It's one continuous thread, isn't it? From God the King establishing his rule in creation,
Yeah, then choosing Israel as his kingdom of priests, demonstrating his power in the Exodus, making a covenant at Sinai.
navigating the complexities of human kingship while always affirming his ultimate sovereignty through things like the Psalms,
And then the prophets widening the view, foretelling a universal peaceful reign under a coming perfect king.
culminating in Daniel's vision of a eternal, indestructible kingdom that will replace all human empires. It truly is one grand narrative.
It really is. The whole Bible is telling this one story in many ways, the story of God establishing his kingdom.
So, as we wrap up this discussion, here's maybe a final thought to leave everyone with.
Yeah, something to chew on. What does it actually change for us, for how we see history, politics, even our own lives, to realize that this divine kingdom plan has been unfolding since the very beginning? That it's been shaping events all along and it's heading towards a conclusion, a reign that never ends.
That's a deep one. Definitely gives you a different perspective. Well, we hope this exploration of the kingdom's roots in the Hebrew scriptures has been insightful for you. Thanks so much for joining our Bible discussion today on Bible and Me.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
And seriously, if you got something out of this, please do hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and click the notification bell. And leave a comment. We really do like hearing your thoughts.
It helps us know what resonates and helps others discover these conversations.
Absolutely. So until next time, keep digging into the word.